my fabulous 141. Welcome to another episode of Lindsay's Library. Today I'm going to be reading Chapter 25 of Ella Enchanted, written by Gail Carson Levine. Let's get started. I gaped at the page, read it again, and gaped again. In my daze, I noticed that my sooty thumb had left marks on the letter. He loved me. He'd loved me as long as he'd known me. I hadn't loved him as long, perhaps, but now I loved him equally well, or better. I loved his laugh, his handwriting, his steady gaze, his honorableness, his freckles, his appreciation of my jokes, his hands, his determination that I should know the worst of him, and most of all, shameful though it might be, I loved his love for me. Placing my candle carefully, I danced and whirled around my room. I could marry Shar and live with my love. I could leave Mom Olga and her spawn. No one would give me orders. This was an unexpected solution to my trouble. Lucinda would have hated for me to evade my obedience by rising above it. And even Mandy would be surprised by this method of ending the curse. I extracted paper from the hiding place at the bottom of my wardrobe. My love shouldn't have an extra moment of impatience. However, my stub of a candle flickered out as soon as I wrote, "Dearest Shar, darling Shar, beloved Shar." I ordered my mind to wake me the instant there was light enough to write by. Then I fell asleep, composing my letter. In the middle of the night, I awoke, my happiness draining away. I wouldn't escape the curse by marrying Shar. I would be more cursed than ever, and he would be cursed too. Suppose my obedience were discovered. My step-family knew and would take advantage to improve their rank and fortune. But that would be the least of it. An enemy of Curia could put the curse to more awful use. In unscrupulous hands, I would be a powerful tool. I could be made to reveal state secrets. I could even be forced to kill Shar. And I had no doubt my secret would be discovered. In court, there would be eyes and ears that would be alive to such signs. I'd never manage to fool them all. What could I do? Mother had ordered me not to tell anyone about the curse. But Mandy could countermand the order, so I'd be able to tell Shar. Then he could take precautions. I'd tell him. I'd wake Mandy now. I sat up in bed, happy again, and sank back. What precautions could Shar take? He could prevent anyone from speaking to me or writing to me. He could shut me away. That might do. But he would have to bring me my meals, the flax to spin my clothes, the wood for my fire. It would be a burden similar to one of Lucinda's wedding gifts. And what would Curia think of a hermit queen? And how would I feel, locked away like Rapunzel in her tower? Moreover, even the best precautions might fail. I could ask him to give up being crowned prince in favor of his sister. If he were never to be king, he might not be a target. But how could I ask such a thing? How could he accept? And would the danger simply move to his sister? We could keep the marriage a secret. That was absurd. The secret would get out. I cast about for other ideas, but none came. Cursed, I couldn't marry him. But if I ever managed to break the curse in a month or in 20 years, I would find him and win him over again, if he was still free. No matter what I had to do, no matter how long it took. But now my only choice was to convince him to give me up. When I finally thought what to say and began to write, I ruined 3 sheets of paper by crying on them, and a 4th because I forgot to misspell words. My dear Prince Charmant, your latest correspondence with my stepsister was received by my mother, Dame Olga, and myself. Ella and the cook Mandy were not here to accept it. Ella is absent because she has eloped, taking our cook with her. She left a note which I have enclosed for your perusal. You have been much deceived in her. It was her custom to read your letters aloud to us and crow over them, thinking it a feather in her cap to be writing to royalty such as yourself. For a while she had ambitions to be queen, but she despaired of it and took another offer. She would go into one of her dreadful rages if she knew the contents of your letter. I do not think she liked living on her generosity, and longed to be able to lord it over us with greater splendor than we could hope for, although we fancy that our style is very fine. Your letter arrived 4 days after her departure. I know, because Dimby had a ball that night, and Ella was greatly missed. Her beaux turned to me for consolation, and I gave them the same advice I have for you. Think no more of the minx, because she has already forgotten you. I am sorry to dismay you, but I hope you will be consoled by the fond wishes of this admirer, your angel of comfort, Hattie. I tore a sheet of paper in half for the enclosure, written in my own hand. These are the first words I ever penned as a married lady. You know him, but I shall not write his name, only that he is very old and very rich, and lives far from Frau, and he is fool enough to make me his bride. Some day, and the day may not be long in coming, I shall be sole mistress of a vast estate. I shall not write again, but look for me. When my husband dies, I shall visit Frau. Should you spy a carriage that surpasses all others, peer inside. You will find me within, smiling at my jewels and laughing at the world. Ella. Char's anger at his tutor would be nothing compared with this. He would hate me until the end of the world. In the morning, Mandy dispatched the correspondence, thinking it an ordinary letter. I didn't tell her about Char's proposal for fear she would think I should accept him. Although I knew I was right, I doubted I could withstand any argument. As soon as she left to post the letter, I collapsed in front of the fireplace sobbing. When she returned, in half an hour, I was still in tears. She gathered me in her arms. What's the trouble, sweet? For a few minutes I continued to cry too hard to speak. When I was able to control myself, I told her. Did I do right? I asked her at the end. Come with me, lady. She grabbed my hand and half dragged me to her room, passing several servants in the hall. Once there, she closed the door and turned to me. Lady, you did right. Now I'm going to do right. Something I should have done long ago. Get behind the curtains, love. I hesitated, pushing back the urge to obey. Why? I'm going to settle scores of scores with Lucinda. I want you to see me do it, but I don't want her to see you. I hid. Lucinda, I need you. The scent of lilacs filled the room. I stifled a gasp. I could see Lucinda's outline through the rough weave of the draperies. I never thought the day would come when the kitchen fairy would call me. I'm delighted. How can I help you, dear? Don't dear me, Mandy sighed, but you're right. I need your help, and I love to help. Safely hidden, I grimaced at her. I've been gathering my courage to ask you ever since the fairy ball. One only has to ask. Mandy sounded regretful. At the ball, I got into an argument with Kirby. You shouldn't have. I never argue. But I do. It was about you. Kirby said we should suggest you try being a squirrel and try being obedient. If you gave it a fair trial, 3 months as a squirrel, three as an obedient human, you'd find out that your gifts aren't so wondrous after all. I don't have to try out my gifts to know they're magnificent. That's what I said you'd say. There, I can tell Kirby I won the argument. I said you'd be too afraid. You were wrong to put it to the test. Lucinda vanished. She must have been too angry at Mandy to continue the discussion, but then Mandy laughed. Don't forget to be obedient, little one. Here's a nice walnut. I'm sending you to a comfortable park. She paused. You can come out, lady. Did she really turn herself into a squirrel? I emerged cautiously. She did. Mandy was still laughing. Do you think she'll learn? If she doesn't, she's even more of a blockhead than I think. What if an animal eats her? If that happened, I'd fear for the animal. She chuckled. What a stomachache it would have. If she learns her lesson, will she undo all her gifts? I don't know. I just had to stop her mischief. You may yet break the curse yourself. But if she discovers how wrong she was, she'll want to lift the spell. Maybe, but it would be more big magic. Mandy drew me into a hug. Oh, love, I know what that spell does to you. I pushed out of her arms. You don't know. And how can you warn against big magic when you just summoned Lucinda? Nothing one fairy does to another is big magic, lady. Stop calling me lady. You used to call Mother that. Now you're a lady too. If you'd put yourself first and married the prince, someone would have come along to harm him and cure you. Sure as cabbages. You're a heroine, sweetie. I'd rather be his wife. The tears welled up again, and I threw myself across Mandy's bed. She sat next to me, stroking my back and murmuring, Oh, sweet, my lady, perhaps it will come right. She shifted her weight. Something crackled, and she exclaimed, What's this? Oh, I forgot. When I posted your letter, there was one for you. She pulled a letter out of her apron pocket. I flew up. It's not in the prince's hand, love. It was from father, saying he wouldn't come home. My servitude pained him, but not enough to return him to the arms of his odious, though beloved wife, he wrote. When I find a husband for you who is rich enough to satisfy me, you will be released from my Olga. Until then, I urge you to be, as always, my stalwart daughter. I fell back on the bed, laughing wildly. Father would make my letter to Shar come true. He would marry me off to an ancient man who would soon die and leave me enormously wealthy. The irony. I couldn't catch my breath. Tears ran down my face, and I didn't know whether I was laughing or crying. Mandy held me until I quieted. While she rocked me, I thought that Lucinda might save me. Mandy might be wrong. Once Lucinda knew how it was to be obedient, she wouldn't be able to leave me cursed. She'd have to help me. A week later, I saw in my magic book that Shar had received my message. I opened to an illustration in which he was burning my letters. I was glad to see his image, no matter what the image was doing. After I gazed a while and ran my fingers over his shape, I turned the page and found an entry in his journal. I've lost nothing. She never was what I thought her, so I've lost nothing. I'm only fortunate, and Curia is blessed that she eloped before my letter reached her. When I received the message from her sister, I thought it had to be a ploy to make me hate Ella, and I resolved not to be taken in. For a while, I considered leaving Eorthia to discover the truth. Gradually, however, I realized the truth was in my hands. The sister could have no reason to lie to me. If Ella and I had married, she would only gain. But Ella's note convinced me in the end. It was in her hand. And the last phrase about smiling at her jewels and laughing at the world was certainly her own. She charmed me as easily as she did the ogres. I never did discover why she hid after her father's wedding. She was probably avoiding a lovesick swain, not wealthy enough or ancient enough to suit her. Her avoidance of me after the wedding was another trick, the meaning of which is too deep for me to fathom. But her letters were the greatest deception of all. She seemed so good-hearted. But I suppose that's the way with such women. They wouldn't be minxes if they weren't masters of artifice and fraud. How she must have laughed when I confessed my faults to her. There was more. In addition to minx, he called me flirt, harpy, siren, enchantress, temptress, and even monster. He ended by writing, "I wish I weren't in Eorthia. The silence here offers too much time for thought. 1,000 times a day, I swear never to think of her. At least I can promise never to write or speak of her again, and can force my pen and my voice to keep my word. I endured 6 months of Hattie and Olive and Mum Olga by imagining my freedom when Lucinda released me from the curse. I didn't give up writing to Shar. Since the new letters were never posted, I told him the truth about my life in Mum Olga's household. When Hattie told me that this earl or that duke loved her, I laughed over the absurdity of it with him. When Olive made me count her money again, he was informed. Every day, she invents new hiding places for her wealth. There are coins in the hem of her gown, coins sewn into her sash, coins buried in the stuffing of her waist-roll. With all the metal concealed about her person, she had best not set foot on a boat. When Mum Olga had me clean out the root cellar, and I found a tabby with her litter of kittens, Shar learned of my delight. And when Mandy taught me cooking secrets, I shared them with him. I also described my future without the curse. My first act, I wrote, will be to confess that I love you. I'll beg pardon 1,000 times for causing you unhappiness, and make reparations by making you laugh 1,000 times. The night before Lucinda's reappearance, Hattie awakened me when she returned from a cotillion. She said I had to help her prepare for bed. I had never had to before, so I waited to learn her real reason. Tonight, they talked of nothing but Prince Charmant's return next month, she began while I undressed her. I knew exactly when he was coming home, so why was my heart beating so? They say that King Gerald is going to hold 3 royal balls to welcome him. They say the prince will pick his wife at the balls. Ouch! Be careful! I had stabbed her with a stay. For once, it was accidental. Mama says if I didn't hear anything more. Were the balls Char's idea? Did he really mean to find his bride there? Had he forgotten me? Could I make him remember when Lucinda freed me? Hattie dismissed me eventually, and I spent the hours till dawn imagining my release from the curse, and thinking about my reunion with Char. I couldn't decide whether I should steal one of Mum Olga's horses and ride to Eorthia to surprise him, or whether I should wait and amaze him at the balls. In the morning, I woke Mandy and tried to convince her to feign illness, so she could call Lucinda immediately, but no. First, we had to prepare Mum Olga's breakfast and wash all the dishes. And Mandy wouldn't use the smallest magic to speed the process. When we were through at last, Mandy and I repaired to her bedroom, and I hid as before. This time, the room didn't fill with the scent of lilacs. When Lucinda arrived from my hiding place behind the curtains, I heard a rustling noise, and then the sound of weeping. "Stop sniveling," Mandy said. The weeping became louder, more despairing. "I can't." The music and lilt were gone from Lucinda's voice. I heard panting as she fought to catch her breath. "But if I were still obedient," she puffed, "I would have to stop crying, just because you told me to." More sobs. "What did I bring on these poor innocent people? How could I have done big magic, and so carelessly?" "Your gifts weren't a boon?" I'd never heard Mandy be sarcastic before. "They were dreadful, terrible," Lucinda wailed. I wondered if her experiences had been at all like mine. What happened? Mandy asked, her voice kinder. It was much worse to be obedient, but being a squirrel was bad enough. Half the time I was cold and wet, and I was always hungry. I never got a decent night's sleep because I was too cramped, curling up in knotholes. Once an eagle carried me off. I was only saved because it flew into a violent storm and dropped me over a tree. And when you were obedient? I turned myself into the 8-year-old daughter of shopkeepers. I thought it was only fair to be a child, since I always bestowed obedience on infants. I suppose my parents meant well, but they insisted I eat the most awful food, and I had to go to bed before I was sleepy. My parents wouldn't let me disagree with them about anything. My father loved to read parables aloud, and I had to listen to every word. They commanded me to think about the morals, so even my thoughts had to be obedient. And all this I suffered at the hands of good people who loved me. If anything had happened to them, I shudder to think what would have become of me. You won't bestow any more gifts then? Never. I wish I could take them all back. I stepped out from behind the curtain, even though I had promised I wouldn't. Please do take them back. And that ends chapter 25 of Ella Enchanted, written by Gail Carson Levine. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Lindsay's Library. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. And also, if you want, you can check out my links down in the description below. The first of which is for my affiliate with So Sick Clothing. There's a promo code through them that will get you 15% off site-wide. That promo code is August15. And there's also a couple of other links down there. That's for the Lovecraft website, which has my llama and deer t-shirts that I designed, and they also have a lot of really cool pottery pieces and such. And there's also my Teespring store that has just other stuff that's not llama or deer related, but more of my design stuff. Anyway, the rest of my links are my website, my social media, my podcast, All Grace After Hours, new episodes every Tuesday, and that is available on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much any podcast platform you can think of, and the rest of it's my social media. Thank you for watching, and above all else, stay fabulous. Bye!